I'm Dr. Ray Middleton. I help people by delivering great training. Here's an example of an episode from one of my training courses. Supportive supervision or co-vision needs to encourage self-care, as this helps sustain that sense of balance and connection with colleagues. Secondary trauma and loss is normal. It's part of the work. Supervision or co-vision creates reflective supportive spaces to allow people to make sense of and process this secondary trauma and the loss experienced through the work. This can also help avoid compassion fatigue or burnout, because we are working with people with high levels of historic unresolved trauma. The work is emotionally demanding, and so it's important to regularly schedule group and individual one-to-one supervision or co-vision. These meetings, and it's so important not to cancel them. In lots of services, the busyness means you start to cancel things and you don't get that supportive supervision because you're too busy, and it becomes a bit of a catch-22, because people then aren't really being very effective. They're not processing and making sense of the work. They're not being supported. It's easy for staff to feel overwhelmed and isolated if we do not regularly meet with each other and check in around our well-being. How are we doing? Check in. Having a safe space to make sense of the work and our own reactions to the work is essential. We may experience reactions to the work and the people that we're reaching out to in many different areas of our life, such as we might react to the work in how we feel, or we might react to the work in our thinking. We might start to get, say, cynical about people in general, or we might react to the work in our behaviour. We might start to develop an addiction to cope with the stress of the work, for example. Or we might react to the work in how we relate to other people. We might start to withdraw from other people if we're feeling a bit burnt out. So there's these different areas where we might respond to the work, and we need to pay attention to them. And supervision can give us a space to explore that and catch it early if things are starting to become difficult, and process it, make sense of it. If we're in a role of providing supportive supervision for others, our main goal is to develop trusting and supportive relationships with those staff members, whilst helping them apply their strengths and skills to their work. Effective way to do this, one example, is to encourage people to tell their personal story or narrative and describe how it relates to their work this week, in terms of meaning and value. This connection of the work to people's personal narrative helps them make sense of the challenging experiences that they've undergone, maybe in the work, difficult situations they're in. So why are they interested in doing this kind of work? And that can help them make sense of things. They're less likely to take reactions home to the work if you're giving them a bit of space to make sense of it. They're less likely to wake up in the night thinking about some aspect of the work if you've given them some support supervision space to make sense of the difficulties. In group co-vision or supervision and reflective practice, staff can hear other members talk about how their values and personal narratives connect to the work, how they make sense of the challenges, and as you're listening to someone else maybe describe it in the group, the work in a staff team. This can help develop skills and understanding and a sense of not being alone in the work, because we hear colleagues' experiences of the work. Maybe they feel anxious, and then we think, I feel anxious too, but it's normal. So I don't feel as alone in my reactions to the work. It's a normal process. By listening to and sharing personal stories about the work, we develop a sense of the limits of what we can do, as well as our strengths and resources and capacities. So that this helps as well. Groups often talk about our role and limits and exploring that, so we don't overpromise, we don't overstretch and get burnt out, but we stick to what we can realistically do within our role definition. This helps us to stay emotionally centered, as we're not overpromising what we can do, but maintaining being realistic in our assessment of what we can and cannot offer. And supervision, reminding staff that we only ever partly know what's going on, and there are real limits on the resources we can offer, can reduce staff anxiety. We only understand another person's experience from the relatively remote context of our own narrative world and values. From our world and our perspective, our house of language, to use Jay's phrase, our perspective, we're curiously and appreciatively inquiring and trying to learn about the other person's world and see whether or not we can be helpful. I found it helpful to think that we're on a learning journey together with the people that we're reaching out to get alongside, and with our colleagues and other members of the team. Nobody has to know all the answers. We have access to a pool of ideas and skills and practical resources within a group of staff team members, and we may be able to draw on these resources by opening up a dialogue about specific challenges of the work. Some good topics for one-to-one or group supervision or co-vision could be, for example, a case review of a particular person you're working with, and feedback about describing the particular person that we're working with. And we could describe how the relationship between the worker and the person we're trying to support is going, including difficulties in that working relationship. We could include the goals, try and describe the goals that we're working on together, how the journey is progressing, how motivated they are, what are any barriers that are coming up in the work that might need to be overcome. These kinds of questions can help supervision become a safe learning community about the very practical work we're trying to do. In supervision, we could ask questions based on the principles of pretreatment, and that can be another way to put content into the supervision or reflective practice space. For example, we could ask what stage of engagement the work with the client is at. You know, are they pre-contemplative? Are they planning? Are they trying to maintain a change? We could ask about the common language construction. Has a common playground of language been developed? Or what phrases are important to the person in their narrative? And are there words or phrases we're avoiding using because they're triggering to the client? What stages of change is the client at? Are they pre-contemplative? Have we got a clear goal that we are working towards collaboratively? Have we done a safety assessment with the client, even if it's initial stages and that's initially are in our head, but we could verbalize it and then we might write it down because if that's part of your procedures. But it can be a good thing to talk about in group and one-to-one supervision. Consider whether or not we need to take a more proactive approach to risk management or harm reduction, or a more harm reduction, more giving them a bit more responsibility. These kind of topics can be good for supervision about whether to how active or how much to give them a bit more responsibility around problem solving or risk management. Asking these kinds of pre-treatment principle questions in supervision can help keep the work client-centered and goal-driven. It is the supervisor's job to encourage staff and instill some hope and provide some guidance, but we can do this in a collaborative and communicative way where we share power and we listen carefully to what the staff member is saying about their personal story, their values, the meaning they're making of the work, and how this relates to them as a person, how they're processing it, how they're feeling. We're not robots, are we? We've got thoughts and feelings about the work. I encourage staff to see both themselves and the person they're working with as temporarily journeying together, meeting through a dialogue, and our lives, our journeys temporarily overlap. Our worlds overlap for a bit as we journey together. We are both unfinalized personalities who can listen to and learn from each other at a crossroads on our journey through life. We can learn as much from the people we're trying to offer help to as they can learn from us. So we strive for some kind of mutuality as we journey through life, and we're trying to offer some helpful things, and we're also willing to be changed and learn from the people we're engaging with. It's a sharing of power and a kind of humility around we don't know everything that's going on. We're just trying to learn as we go along on a learning curve and get better at helping people. I hope you found that helpful. For more information about the training I can offer, email me at ray.middleton@ladderforlife.com or sign up for one of my free trauma-informed courses by clicking the link in the comments. Like and subscribe for more helpful videos, or post a question in the comments and I'll reply.